What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants did make a massive upgrade at the linebacker position this offseason, signing free agent linebacker Bobby Okereke from the Indianapolis Colts. Now, he's your LB1 this upcoming season, but who's your LB2? Now, the Giants have a few players that could maybe compete for the job. Micah McFadden, rookie from last year. He played a lot this season. He did struggle at times, but he was a rookie. And then, of course, another rookie they drafted last year, Darian Beavers, missed the entirety of the season with an injury. Giants fans have a lot of high hopes for him. Maybe he could take the starting job, or Gerard Davis, one of these veterans. But also, there is the possibility that the Giants go into this upcoming 2023 NFL draft and find some more linebacker talent. And we think we've identified a few players in these middle rounds that could compete and maybe steal that starting job for the Giants if they were to draft them. So we're going to go ahead and dive into 3 mid-round linebacker prospects that the Giants might want to target and that make a lot of sense for the Giants, and especially for the brand of defense that Wink Martindale likes to play. So we're going to go ahead and dive into these 3 prospects, but before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend, and what are your thoughts on some of these mid-round linebacker prospects in the draft?
I am doing great, and the draft is only a couple of days away, my friend, and the Giants have a great opportunity here to make something happen and to make some really good acquisitions, and the linebacker core is one that we want to discuss today. Obviously, we go out and get Bobby Okereke to be our Mike, and that's a tremendous upgrade, right? Bobby Okereke is a freak athlete. He can collect sacks. He can do all the stuff you need to lock down that position long-term on a 4-year, $40 million deal, which is a good investment for us because we've needed an upgrade there for quite some time. And you look at the interior defense, the Giants have allocated plenty of resources towards guys like Raheem Quincy Roche, or Nunez Roche rather, and then of course A'Shawn Robinson yesterday. So they've bolstered the interior of that defense. They've taken some big steps forward. They've increased the talent at the linebacker core. They invested a couple of draft picks last year in guys like Darian Beavers and of course Micah McFadden. But you can never have too many linebackers who can also provide special teams value. So there are a couple of mid-round picks here that we think could be really nice acquisitions, and they're all pretty different than one another. You know, we're talking about guys that are heavily, pass rushers from the linebacker position, some freak athletes that are wide receivers transition to the position where they can lock down guys in coverage, have some good unparalleled athleticism, and then some just well-rounded players that don't have any elite attributes, but also just some good across-the-board solid characteristics that make for a good linebacker at the next level. So we're excited to dive into it, Anthony, but why don't you start us off with your first one?
Yeah, first player that I want to discuss, somebody that I've touched on a few times on this channel before, also written a couple articles about him on EmpireSportsMedia.com, and that is Dion Henley. So this is a player who has a lot of coverage capabilities. Out of Washington State, a linebacker, 6'2", 232 pounds, and he's fast, man. He can run, he can move, and he has sideline-to-sideline speed. He ran a 4.54 40-yard dash at the 2023 NFL Scouting Combine, which for a linebacker is pretty damn good. Also added in a 35-inch vertical jump and a 10-foot 5-inch broad jump. So what's his ideal role? What's his scheme fit according to the Draft Network? Well, they think that he could be a sub-package linebacker, plays in zone and a blitz-heavy defensive scheme. Now that's exactly what the New York Giants run. Wink Martindale loves to run his cover 3 zone defense with those press cornerbacks on the outside, and he loves to blitz. We know that, and that's going to be a theme with all 3 of these players that we discuss in this episode. Blitzing linebackers who can actually provide something while getting after the quarterback. And Dion Henley, not only can he do that, he can also make an impact in coverage. There's some clips on his film where he pretty much locks down tight ends, and all of that has to do with his speed, his athleticism, his ability to get to the sideline. A tight end running to the flat, a tight end running an out route. Dion Henley is one of those rare linebacker prospects that can actually stay with that tight end, get to the sideline, and undercut that route. So when you're looking at the Giants defense and what they're missing, I think some coverage capabilities from the linebacker spot is a big need for this defense. Right now, Bobby Okereke, he's a great player, and he also has a little bit of that ability to be your coverage linebacker, but primarily his role is going to be defending the run. Stopping the run is what he was really good at. He was a tackle merchant for the Indianapolis Colts. He had 151 combined tackles in 2022. So Okereke, he's going to continue to play that role, be that enforcer in the middle of the field. But opposite of him, you want a guy with a little bit of coverage capability. Does Micah McFadden have that ability? I don't personally think so. And also when you look at Darian Beavers coming off of that injury, who knows how well he's going to be as a coverage linebacker. So when you're looking at a guy like Dion Henley, who has that speed to get to the sideline, shut down some of these tight ends, you know that's a need for the Giants. You know that's a perfect fit, because look at go ahead and look at that Vikings game, right? The regular season game. Adoree Jackson's out with an injury, so of course Justin Jefferson has a great game, but whatever. Let's look at TJ Hawkinson in that game because he utterly dominated the Giants defense. Like, Hawkinson could not be contained by anybody that the Giants had out there. We know that when Xavier McKinney's not on the field, or Julian Love when he wasn't on the field, and now he won't be in the future, the Giants didn't have a linebacker that can match up with these tight ends, especially not any slot receivers, but primarily those tight ends were running all over the Giants defense, willy-nilly, getting free downfield. So Dion Henley, he would be a second-round prospect to look at. So we're talking about middle rounds. These other two guys that we're going to discuss probably later on in the draft, but more on that high-end spectrum, looking at a guy like Dion Henley on a day two makes a lot of sense for the Giants. Now, we'll see what they do in round one. There's not really a bunch of round one linebacker prospects this year. There's maybe one who goes in the first round, but primarily, I think there might be a run on linebackers in rounds 2 and 3, and that's where you could see Dion Henley fall into the laps of the New York Giants, and they might look at him and say, this is the perfect player to pair with Bobby Okereke. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on Dion Henley, this real athletic linebacker type with the ability to cover tight ends, and why do you think that's something, the ability to cover tight ends, why do you think that's something that's so important for the Giants to find in this linebacker prospect?
I mean, look, if you're a Giants fan, you know what tight ends, running backs, and these bigger guys have done to us in the past without these coverage linebackers. We haven't had someone that can do this in I don't know how long. I honestly, I don't even think I was alive the last time we had a good coverage linebacker, and I'm 26, so it's been a long time. I feel as though you're looking at a player like Dion Henley, and he ranked in the 70th percentile in athleticism score. He ranked 8th in this combine among all linebackers in the draft class. He's a good player, and you look at his total score via Next Gen Stats, and he ranks 4th at the linebacker position. So he's a good player. He's a 4.54 40-yard dash guy, so it's not crazy, but he's got enough athleticism to stand up and do some good stuff for you. He's a physical player. They label him as a rambunctious inside linebacker with good speed and toughness. His playing style is described more as active than instinctive. So the thing with Dion Henley is he's not refined. You know what I mean? He's a raw prospect. He doesn't have that much experience at the linebacker position. He can't play stack linebacker. He has to be kind of an inside guy. They have to let him roam. They have to let him expand on that athletic profile. He's going to need a lot of experience. So if you draft a guy like Dion Henley, I'm not expecting him to be a starter immediately. He needs a year of development to assume that starting role. Maybe if there's injuries, you throw him in there, you get him in there in certain packages. Maybe if you have a really good coverage matchup, you'd like him to kind of be a spy on. I do think that there's value there to be had, but he's a developmental player. This is a player that's going to get better with time. If the Giants really do see this as a rebuilding year, maybe you do just end up starting him and allowing him to get that essential experience and then to develop in live time, in live action. Or you'd rather just have a competitive kind of position battle there and see who shakes out next to Bobby Okereke. So do I like Dion Henley? I really, really do. I think his athletic profile is awesome. I think he has a lot of positives. His negatives are more experience-based. I think his athletic profile fits what we want pretty nicely. And if the Giants are going to be playing a heavy man coverage scheme under Wink Martindale's tutelage, a guy that can coverage out of the linebacker position is certainly one to consider. Now, they have him as a 2 to 3 round draft projection. I think he probably lands in the 3rd round, if we're being honest. I think the linebackers this year are a little bit thin, but he has a lot of upside. And I do think that if he was there with our 3rd round pick, I would heavily consider bringing him in to kind of compete and develop. So, again, he's a player that needs a lot of action. He needs a lot of experience, but they do also think he could be a core special teams player. So I do think that even if he does take a little bit of time to step up and kind of earn the opportunity, earn the reps, and develop behind the scenes, he's going to offer you a lot of value on special teams immediately, which I think is very valuable for a guy like Joe Shane and Brian Dable, who do like players that can contribute, even if they're not ready to take on a starting job just yet.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really great way to look at all three of these players because linebackers traditionally, those mid-late round guys, they do find ways to make names for themselves on special teams. It's very important to have linebacker prospects who can develop there before getting ready to play on your defense in your starting 11. So when you're looking at Dion Henley as a 2nd or 3rd round pick, he's going to see the field. If the Giants were to draft him, he's going to see the field immediately. Will he be one of the Giants starting linebackers? Maybe not from day one, but he will definitely be contributing on special teams. And we know that Joe Shane loves to find players that can compete in more than one facet of the game. And speaking of which, Dion Henley, former wide receiver, so he can technically compete in every facet of the game, wide receiver, linebacker, and special teams player. So that's something to take note of. But of course, course, his wide receiver past has those, it brings him that athleticism that translates to him being a very good coverage linebacker. So that's why I really like Dion Henley for the Giants. But let's move on to our second linebacker prospect that I want to discuss. And this is a player who I think is more of a later round pick. He's got a fourth round grade by the Draft Network. Some sites have him going anywhere between the fourth or fifth round right here, and that's Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. Now, that's a player who you want to keep an eye on because he's a perfect fit for what Wink Martindale likes to do defensively. Very undersized. We'll get that out of the way immediately. Like, this is not one of your traditional big-time brawlers in the middle of the field. Ivan Pace Jr. is 5'10", and a half. Like, that's it. Just 5'10" and a half, and also 231 pounds. So he's really undersized for the position, but he brings with him some great speed, some great instincts, and a lot of pass rushing capabilities. This guy had 55 pressures from the off-ball linebacker spot this past season. Not as an edge rusher, not as a D lineman, as a middle linebacker, 55 pressures is an utterly insane number, and the New York Giants blitzed at the highest rate of any team in the NFL this past season. So when you're looking at Ivan Pace Jr., he loves to blitz. Wink Martindale loves to blitz. Match made in heaven, right? Developmental prospect in those middle rounds. That's exactly what Wink Martindale is going to want from Joe Schoen. He's going to say, hey, get me a linebacker who could fit in the middle of my defense and get after the quarterback. Let me develop him and make him something special. This is a Wink Martindale linebacker right here in Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. And also out of Cincinnati, a little bit of a Giants connection there, right, Alex? I know that you wanted to kind of tie that point in.
Absolutely. So you look at Darren Beavers coming from Cincinnati last year. The Giants obviously are looking at those guys. Beavers coming off an ACL tear, has played with Ivan Pace, apparently. So you kind of maybe go to Darren Beavers and say, hey, what do you think about this guy? Pace is a really intriguing player. And the reason is he is a freaking head full of fire. If you watch him play, he is balls to the wall going 100%. Just speed and absolute just bulldozing qualities when it comes to rushing the passer, trying to get into the backfield quickly to stop running backs or whatever it might be. This dude just is awesome when it comes to his center of gravity. You don't see him fall very often. He maintains his balance after getting pushed and shoved and hit and blocked. He just stays upright. He finds his way back, and his pursuit speed is just real. It's legit. He gets after guys, and when he's got his heat-seeking missile type of mentality, you just can't stop him. Like, he just is 100% running at you full speed, and you have to be Lamar Jackson or like one of the most elusive players in the game to shake free of this guy. Like, he just closes on you so fast, and he wraps you up, and he's a very physical player. Now, the question is he a one-trick pony? Is Ivan Pace a one-trick pony? Is he really just going to be that like balls to the wall, blitzing type of linebacker? Can he play the run game? Can he play in coverage? Like, these are definitely questions that need to be answered, and if we're being honest with you, it's probably unlikely he's going to be that type of player for any team. I think if you're a Wink Martindale style defense and you want to go and get a late round guy who can provide you a lot of really good pass rush qualities on third down, Ivan Pace is a great situational linebacker to have, to utilize it at any given moment. Now, I'm not going to be sitting here telling you that Ivan Pace is going to be a every down linebacker. He's going to sit there and play inside linebacker next to Bobby Okereke. But if it's third down and it's third and long, or it's third down and it's third and 4, and you need someone to blitz the quarterback and force a bad throw, force an opportunity to go away, this is the player that you want on your team. This is the player that you want on the field at that point in time. The overview from Lance Zierlein of the NFL Network essentially says he's a rare blend of leverage, toughness, and tackle obsession. Makes Pace's tape a fun day of film study. He might be one of the strongest players in the 2023 NFL draft from pound for pound standpoint. He's able to slip in club blockers out of the way with lower body anchor and elite contact balance, which I referenced before. He was cleared to take shots downfield by the defense, which bolstered his production, but his instincts and feel for finding routes to the ball seemed to drive him. It is hard not to love Pace's game tape, but his lack of length and speed could create inconsistencies at the next level. So again, if you're looking for a guy who can just really go all out when it comes to ball pursuit, putting pressure on quarterbacks, really expanding the athletic profile of that LB2 next to Bobby Okereke, Ivan Pace can be a great situational player for you, but he's a one-trick pony at this point in time. I don't trust him in coverage. I don't trust him in the run game, shedding blocks. But downfield, his contact balance is elite. So maybe there's something to develop there. Maybe there is something nice. And I'll tell you what, when you're in the 4th and 5th rounds, it's hard to find players that have any elite metrics. It's fine to find players that have any elite qualities. So at the very least, you go and get a player that has an elite quality that will offer you some sort of production in a certain facet. And I think that is a good logical explanation as to why you take shots on players like this, because you don't find guys with elite traits in the late rounds. And if you find someone that does like this with elite contact balance and tremendous pass rush qualities from the linebacker position, you take a shot on him. And I think Wink Martindale would love to have a player like Yvonne Pace.
Yeah, listen, I think that it's a perfect fit for Wink Martindale specifically. Now, you can't say that Ivan Pace is just a perfect prospect or a perfect fit with any team, but for Wink Martindale, wanting these blitzing, sometimes undersized, really fast blitzing linebackers who can kind of just be your bowling ball in the middle of the field, that's what Wink Martindale is looking for. So having one of these guys in those middle rounds as a developmental piece like an Ivan Pace Jr. just makes a bunch of sense to me. And again, this guy is super undersized. However, I think with the right coaching staff, with the right development, he could be a pretty good player, at least as a rotational off-ball pass rusher in a defense, particularly in the Giants defense. But let's move on to our third player. Now, this is kind of your more traditional linebacker here, a player with NFL bloodlines, Noah Sewell, brother of Penei Sewell, former first-round pick, offensive tackle of the Detroit Lions. Noah Sewell also played at Oregon, and he's a bigger body, more run defense type approach. So kind of went with all three different flavors here. We got you your coverage linebacker in Dion Henley. We covered him first. Then we went Ivan Pace Jr., who's strictly like your blitzer. Now we have a guy who actually makes a pretty solid impact in the running game, but also as a blitzer. Noah Sewell, here's how the Draft Network described him. They said that he was a traditional Mike linebacker, but he moved all across the formation, seeing snaps at edge and in the slot in coverage. As a run defender, Sewell is an aggressive downhill player who thrives in the box. So this is going to be your Mike linebacker, your middle of the field, your downhill run defender. And that's also something that the Giants might find valuable with Noah Sewell, because when you're looking at how this team played last year, the run defense was atrocious. We know how bad it was. We saw it on full display in the divisional round of the postseason. The Giants led up 268 rushing yards to Philadelphia as they got bounced out of the playoffs. But Noah Sewell could be kind of one of those developmental 4th or 5th round prospects who steps in and maybe contributes as a run defender. He's 6'1.5", 246 pounds, so he's big, he's burly, he's got a lot of size and mass to him, 31-inch arms and 10-inch hands. He's very long as well, and he also put up 27 bench reps at the combine. Now, he's not the fastest or most athletic player. He only ran a 4.64 40-yard dash, so this isn't going to be your coverage linebacker. He's not going to be your sideline to sideline speed linebacker, but he can be your closing speed linebacker, middle of the field, get into the backfield to blow up a running back or at least fill up some rushing lanes at the line of scrimmage. So Noah Sewell, kind of your more traditional linebacker prospect. He also is a pretty good blitzer as well, so I think that he fits in with what Wink Martindale wants to do there, because maybe instead of looking at Ivan Pace Jr., who you said could potentially be a one-trick pony as a blitzer, well, Noah Sewell, I wouldn't call him a one-trick pony at all. I think that he can move around the formation, be your Mike linebacker as a run defender, also set the edge as an edge rusher as well in run defense, and can also do a little bit of blitzing. So kind of does a little bit of everything, not necessarily coverage-wise, but in terms of run defending and pass rushing, that's where Noah Sewell might make a lot of sense for the New York Giants and Wink Martindale. If you think back to those defenses that he had with the Baltimore Ravens, he just had a flurry of linebackers. They had so much depth at the position, a lot of mid-round guys that they would draft who could just blitz or stop the run or do a little bit of both. Not necessarily all these great coverage linebackers. They relied more on their safeties for that when Wink Martindale was a DC over in Baltimore. So maybe you can look at Noah Sewell as being one of those players that can build out that linebacker core and give Wink Martindale a little bit more run defense support and also some versatility to aid as a pass rusher. So Noah Sewell, Alex, what are your thoughts on him, and why do you think he might be a fit for the Giants?
Well, as you said, he has NFL bloodlines with Penei Sewell, obviously, in the league already. Again, another guy that kind of has special team value as a first-year player, but I'll tell you what, he's not the fastest in the world. Like, he's a thumper, right? He's a traditional physical thumper. He is really strong. And, like, that's what you're going to get from him, is just really good power. He can, get through those blocks. He can really put a body in the middle. His pursuit speed is bad. His change of direction is pretty bad. And, he's really just a downhill. He kind of has like Blake Martinez vibes to me. You know what I mean? Like, Blake Martinez does not have the best pursuit speed, never had the best, agility, never had the best lateral quickness. But what he did have was a really good power, and he was really, really physical in the trenches. And when he got to you, he could shake off those blocks and he could find the run carry and really had solid vision. He didn't, sometimes you just need guys that are thumpers that are going to just stop the run, and you're going to clog up those gaps that are opening up. You look at Bobby Okereke, more of an athlete, right? The Giants could definitely go in the direction of like having someone with some downhill speed and some power to his game. Noah Sewell, is he going to start? No. He kind of gives me Micah McFadden vibes in a way, in the sense that those two guys are really strong and powerful. McFadden, I think, has a little bit more value as a pass rush piece. But I don't necessarily think Noah Sewell is the best fit for us. I'd rather go with Pace, who is elite when it comes to rushing the passer from the linebacker spot, a little bit more athletic, or with Henley, who is more of a coverage guy that has really just top end athleticism. As I said before, he ranked 4th in the class in athletic profile among linebackers. I'd rather go with one of those two guys. Yes, Henley is not going to be a great player right off the bat because he doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's going to be a great special teams player for you immediately. And you could probably replace Cam Brown because they're not going to extend him. So maybe you just replace Cam Brown with him. And then you can develop him over time, and maybe he becomes a really solid player with good coverage capabilities, especially because eventually Wink Martindale is going to leave, guys. So you can't always draft players. And this is what Joe Shane said recently. You can't always draft players to fit a scheme. Sometimes you just have to draft good football players. And I think Henley is a solid one at that. He's a lot of good athletic profile traits, and I think that you could develop him to fit a multitude of different schemes. And same thing with Pace. I think that he's not going to be the best coverage player. He's not going to be the best, run stopper because he's a little bit undersized, but he can rush the passer really well. And, there is a lot of value to that in any defensive scheme. You always need a linebacker with athletic traits to rush the passer. Sewell is more of a powerful, run stopping guy. I think he can be a decent reserve, but I don't see him as developing into a starter. I think maybe he's better off as a special teams guy, but I don't think he's fast enough to be a gunner. Whereas I do think that Henley could be a gunner early on in his career. So that kind of rounds out my eval of these three players. I think I prefer Pace and Henley because of the upside across the board, and Pace because he has an elite attribute that he can contribute immediately.
Yeah, I like Henley the most out of these prospects. Of course, he's the highest graded. He's projected to go the highest of these 3 prospects. But I really like Henley and what he provides as a coverage guy, also as a blitzer. This is a player who I think can definitely develop into a starting caliber player in the Giants defense. Ivan Pace Jr., one of those players that I think can have a very niche specific role in an NFL defense, but play that role really, really well. So there's a lot of value to be extracted out of a player like that. And then Noah Sewell, I think that he could be a quality player in the NFL, not necessarily a day one starter, but I do believe that this is a guy who's going to stick around the league and probably compete as an LB2 or an LB3 for whatever team he really winds up with and maybe moves across a few teams. But Noah Sewell, man, I think that I'm a little bit higher on him than you are. I don't think that he's going to be a career backup. I don't think he's ever going to be a career LB1. But what he provides as a run defender in the middle of the field is definitely valuable, and it's definitely something that NFL teams are going to take notice of. So this is a player who I definitely think has the potential to have a pretty long and successful NFL career as an LB2, and might make a lot of sense for the Giants as they try to beef up their linebacker core with more run defense focused players, just to really add to the depth of this unit with run defenders. Noah Sewell might make a lot of sense in those middle rounds, but that pretty much rounds out both of our thoughts on all 3 of these prospects. But we want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let us know what you think of these guys, and let us know what other linebacker prospects you think the Giants should be targeting. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But that rounds this one out. We'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.